Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, if you've ever tried to keep up with any high-stakes competitive scene, I don't care if it's market analysis, logistics, or a game like Warhammer 40,000, you know the feeling.
Oh, yeah. The data dump.
Exactly. You get hit with this wall of text, buffs, nerfs, point changes, and you're just left feeling like you need some kind of master key to figure out not just what changed, but the why. The philosophy behind it all.
That feeling of just drowning in information is, well, it's why we're here.
Yeah.
You sent over a really deep analysis of this December 2025 Balance Dataslate. And even though we're talking about a war game, the lessons here about competitive balance are, I think, universal. This isn't just a patch notes list. It's a total philosophical shift, and it's all centered on one idea: reliability.
And that's our mission, right? To get past the line item changes, we want to dive into the intent behind this whole competitive shakeup and really focus on how these tiny, seemingly minor rules tweaks can create these huge ripple effects across the entire game.
We're basically reverse engineering the design algorithm. And you have to, because the old algorithm was broken. The last competitive season was just dominated by what everyone was calling stat checklists.
Ugh, stat check meta. It was just armies that piled on so many defensive stats, you know, spamming heavy vehicles, these huge blocks of infantry you just couldn't damage.
Right. It's just insurmountable durability.
And if you didn't show up with the one specific, perfect anti-tank weapon for the job, and lots of them, you couldn't even play the game. You couldn't interact.
It made for these slow, grinding, frankly, frustrating games.
Yeah.
And it really punished the armies that were already underperforming, the ones that had to rely on a bit of luck to, punch up.
Right.
So the design solution we're seeing here, all through this data slate, is really twofold. It's efficiency and interaction. The goal seems to be making these underdog factions consistently able to threaten the top dogs.
And the big theme, the thing we really pulled from your analysis, is this chase for what you've called the reliability premium. It's like variance, bad luck, the dice gods, whatever you want to call it. That's the real enemy of competitive play.
It absolutely is. The reliability premium is like the mathematical value you give to any rule that cuts down the impact of random chance. A competitive player, when they commit a big, expensive unit to do something, they need to know it's going to perform predictably.
So this data slate is trying to raise the damage floor for those weaker units.
Exactly. Raise the floor while making sure the damage ceiling is still something you can actually reach without a 1 in a million roll.
Okay, let's unpack this then. How this data slate completely rewrites the reliability algorithms for these factions and really introduces a whole new kind of math to the game. We should probably start with the core mechanical fixes that define this whole new era.
Yeah, that's the place to start. To really get the depth of this shift, you have to look at the 3 main tools the designers use to basically inoculate units against variance. These 3 keywords, these 3 mechanics, they're the new benchmark for what reliable offense looks like.
The new gold standard: twin-linked, sustained hits, and that beautiful universal damage fix, D6 plus 1 damage.
Let's start with twin-linked. In this new design language, that means a full reroll to wound. This is, I think, maybe the single most important buff in the whole document.
Because the wound roll is where everything falls apart.
It's the most common point of failure, exactly.
Yeah.
So giving a full reroll just fundamentally warps the probability curves in your favor.
I want to stick on that for a second, that probability curve. So let's say you had an attack that used to wound on a 4+ butch. That's a coin flip, a 50% chance.
Right.
You roll a 1, 2, or 3, you fail. The whole attack, it's just gone, wasted.
Now, with that full reroll, that 50% chance jumps all the way up to 75%. Think about that. You have to fail the first roll and then fail the reroll to get absolutely nothing.
It makes the output so much more predictable.
Massively. It takes these swingy, unreliable units and just makes them statistically consistent.
Okay, so then you add in sustained hits. That generates extra dice when you roll a critical hit, a 6. So that's your high-end insurance policy.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. Sustained hits means that when you do get lucky, you get spectacularly lucky. It makes sure the units still have a high ceiling. It can still spike for that unexpected bit of lethality when you really need it. It's a great counterbalance to the baseline reliability from twin-linked.
And finally, D6 plus 1 damage. I mean, this feels like an elegant solution to the, let's be honest, emotional trauma of rolling a 1 for damage with your giant anti-tank cannon.
It's the ultimate feels-bad moment, right? It just eliminates that statistical damage floor. Before this, rolling a 1 for damage on a last cannon against, say, a 14-wound tank.
Yeah.
It was just soul-crushing. You completely wasted the resource.
But adding that plus 1 means you're guaranteed at least 2 damage.
Guaranteed. It instantly validates those big, single-shot weapons because they can no longer completely fail to do their job.
And if there's one unit, one single unit that just perfectly embodies this whole revolution, going from a joke to a primary threat, it has to be the Adeptus Mechanicus Ironstrider Ballistari, the ultimate casino cannon.
Casino cannon is just perfect for the old AdMech. They looked amazing, they were super mobile, and on paper the weapons were great, but the output was just maddeningly inconsistent.
Yeah, one turn they'd one-shot a land raider, the next turn they'd shoot at a basic infantry squad and do nothing.
Exactly. And that inconsistency just crippled the faction competitively. You couldn't build a strategy around it.
So the overhaul was applied right to their main guns.
Directly. Both the Twin Cognus autocannon and the Twin Cognus lascannon got both twin-linked and sustained hits. That is the single biggest reliability boost given to any unit in this whole data slate. The word twin now actually means something mechanically reliable, not just that it has two barrels.
Okay, let's do the math on that. Let's break down the Twin Cognus lascannon. Before, hitting a big target like a T-12 Land Raider was dicey.
Dicey. So let's say you're hitting on a 4+ and your S-12 weapon needs another 4+ to wound that T-12 tank. Like we said, your old probability to wound was 50%.
Yeah.
A coin flip.
And I've seen it happen so many times. A player hits with 3 shots, needs 3 4s, and they roll a 1, a 2, and a 3. 0 wounds. An entire unit's activation for the turn just gone. Wiped out by bad luck.
And that emotional volatility is exactly what the reliability premium is designed to fix. Now, with Twin Link, that 50% chance to wound jumps to 75%.
Huge.
If you fail that first roll, you get a free do-over. The chance of failing both times is tiny. You've basically guaranteed that your successful hits are going to translate into damage.
And the really elegant part is how twin-linked combines with sustained hits. You called it the compounding efficiency loop.
Yeah, it creates this lethality insurance. So when an Ironstrider rolls a 6 to hit, it triggers sustained hits. You get an extra hit die.
Right.
But because the weapon is also twin-linked, both the original hit and that new hit you just generated get the full reroll to wound.
Oh, that's nasty.
It is. It means your critical hits are almost overwhelmingly likely to convert into successful wounds. You're maximizing both the damage floor and the ceiling at the same time.
The strategic impact of that is immediate. It totally changes how you build your list. We're moving away from needing these big blobs of Ironstriders to a strategy you call minimum size unit spam, or MSU.
Right, because when the unit was a casino cannon, the only way you could try and manage that variance was by taking big squads of 3. You were just hoping the law of averages would work out across 9 dice rolls.
But now, a single one is a real threat.
A single Ironstrider is a credible lethal threat all on its own.
So instead of taking 3 units of 3, I can take, 9 individual Ironstriders? Or just smaller units of 1 or 2? Why is that so much better?
It creates a targeting nightmare for your opponent, a saturation problem. If I'm facing 9 individual Ironstriders, and I only have a few big anti-tank guns, a Tau Railgun, a Votann Hylas cannon, I have to decide if I'm going to waste my one big, powerful shot on a single, cheap Ironstrider model.
It's an inefficient trade.
A horribly inefficient trade. But if I ignore it, that single cheap model still has that 75% reliable S-12 lethality to seriously hurt my tank. It just completely warps the cost-to-threat ratio and forces your opponent into bad decisions.
So they either have to overcommit their best guns, or just let damage leak through turn after turn.
Precisely. And it makes the army so much more flexible. You can screen with one over here, use another to poke a flank over there, and still concentrate fire where you need it.
Before we move on, let's touch on the other gun, the Twin Cognus autocannon. The report flagged this as the new premier elite hunter. Why does this S9 AP1 damage 3 weapon suddenly become the perfect tool for killing elite infantry?
It's just the perfect storm of stats for the current meta, which is full of 3 wound models. Most elite infantry terminators, custodes, they're toughness 5 and they have 3 wounds. S9 wounds T5 on a 2+ end.
Okay, 2+ is already amazing, but you can still fail. There's still that 1 in 6 chance.
But you add the twin link full reroll to wound, and that failure rate plummets to 1 in 36. It's functionally a guaranteed wound.
Yeah.
Every hit is forcing a save.
And then the damage 3 is the killer blow.
That's the magic number. It's the perfect breakpoint for a 3-wound model. If they fail their save, the model is just gone. Instantly removed. There's no wasted damage, no overflow. It's an incredibly efficient execution tool for the most common threats in the whole game. The autocannon went from being the other choice to a purpose-built elite infantry deleting machine.
That is a massive philosophical change. The Ironstrider went from being this swingy, distracting unit to the reliable, high-strength backbone of the whole army. It demands a response from every opponent.
It absolutely sets the stage for everything else in the data slate. It's proof that the designers are prioritizing consistency over those random crazy power spikes.
So we've seen how this efficiency paradigm fixes unreliable shooting. Let's see how that same philosophy applies to high-speed units, the shock troops.
Yeah, the surgical tools. Seems like generalist durability is out, and these specialized high-speed units are in.
And the best example has to be the Ravenwing Black Knights for the Dark Angels.
Absolutely. Their viability was basically resurrected just by an aggressive points cut. It forced them into the role they were always meant to have. Hyper-efficient, mobile damage dealers.
Yeah, they were stuck in competitive purgatory for so long. They were too expensive to lose, but too fragile to actually use them aggressively. People tried to make them a Death Star unit, which they were just not built for.
Exactly. The core problem was what you could call the plasma tax elimination. Black Knights carry these powerful plasma weapons, which have the hazardous keyword.
Meaning you roll a die, and on a 1, the gun blows up and can kill the guy holding it.
Right. And when a single Black Knight model cost, 45 or 50 points, losing one to a failed save was bad enough, but losing one because your own gun exploded. It felt like a total mission failure. The risk just wasn't worth the reward.
But by dropping their cost way down to something like 25 or 30 points a model, that whole risk calculation just flips on its head.
It flips completely. Losing a model to a bad roll or a plasma explosion now just falls under acceptable operational expenditure.
So the trade economy is now in the Dark Angels player's favor. If I lose one of my own guys, but I take out 2 of their critical elite models, that's a win, even if I hurt myself doing it.
Exactly. The unit is now priced like a missile, not a fortress. Its entire job is to be launched, achieve an objective, and pull enemy fire away from the rest of your army.
And this cost reduction works really well with the Dark Angels' own army rules, right?
It's totally synergistic. Black Knights get a huge benefit from detachments like the Inner Circle Task Force. They're already fast, but when you pair them with a character like Sam Asil, their mobility becomes just unparalleled.
And the points drop on the Knights makes taking Sam Asil, who gives them buffs like being able to advance and shoot, feel like a much better investment.
It subsidizes the whole package. It makes the combo work.
Let's talk about the main strategy this enables. You call it the Joust.
The Joust is this high-speed multi-phase attack. The Black Knights have a 12-inch move, and because their plasma guns have the assault keyword, they can advance and still shoot. So they're moving, 20 inches or more. They use that speed to get onto a weak flank, kill a high-value target, and then they can even charge in and finish the job in melee.
So they sound a bit like Inceptors, who were kind of the go-to fast plasma unit before. Why are the Black Knights seen as superior now?
Durability per point, that's the consensus. Inceptors have deep strike, which is great, but Black Knights are toughness 5 with 3 wounds. For their current cost, they're just way harder to remove with regular anti-infantry fire. They're much more likely to survive after they've done their job, which makes them just a better, more competitive flanker.
So the theme continues. Speed, efficiency, specialization. Let's look at another faction that needed that same kind of surgical tool. The AdMech, with their Sicarian infiltrators.
Yeah, AdMech has always struggled with board presence, with just standing in circles and holding objectives. The infiltrators are supposed to be their answer to that.
And their buff is all about making them a real threat in melee. The change seems simple. Their base attacks just went up to 4.
It seems simple, but for a full unit of 10, that's 40 attacks. That is a mountain of dice for a unit that used to be mostly about its debuff aura.
A huge volume.
A phenomenal volume. And the secret ingredient here is that their weapons are AP2. This is what we're calling the Marine Killer Threshold, and it's so important to understand why AP2 is the magic number right now.
Okay, walk us through the math. What's the real difference between AP1 and AP2 in this meta?
So the rule for cover is everywhere. If a model is in cover, it gets +1 to its armor save. A basic Space Marine has a 3+ save.
Right.
Against an AP1 weapon, a Marine in cover saves on a 3+ save, because you've got your 3+ save, +1 for cover, -1 for the AP. You're back to a 3+ fey. The AP1 is completely negated.
But if the infiltrators are AP2...
Now the math is 3+ save, +1 for cover, -2 for the AP. That's a 4+ save. And the difference between making a 3+ save and a 4+ save, I mean, you're going from saving 2/3 of the time to saving only half the time. When you're rolling 40 dice, that sheer volume of AP2 attacks will just grind elite infantry down.
So they're not there to kill a big monster. They're there to efficiently clear out the elite troops trying to hold objectives.
Precisely. But their real value comes from their bird control utility. They still have the infiltrator keyword, so they can deploy way up the board.
And physically block the enemy's pre-game scout moves.
Exactly. They can stop an aggressive army like World Eaters right in their tracks. Plus, they have that hit roll debuff aura. By making them a credible 40-attack melee threat, your opponent can't just send a cheap little unit to get rid of the aura anymore. They have to commit a real combat unit to deal with the infiltrators, which pulls resources away from their main plan. The melee buff forces the opponent to respect them.
Okay, we've hit on reliable shooting and surgical speed. Now let's shift to durability. And specifically, how the Dataslate approaches it with the Leagues of Votann by embracing redundancy over just raw toughness, the mechanized swarm.
Yeah, the Dataslate is definitely pushing Votann hard towards a high-volume, mechanized style of play. It's the solution to their slowness. And the absolute key to this is the Sagitaurs ATV. This unit's change is just a masterful example of a mixed buff and nerf that ends up being a huge net win.
So the nerfs were pretty clear. Toughness went from T10 down to T9, and its objective control, its OC, went from 3 to 2. On paper, it's softer and worse at holding points. That sounds bad.
It does on paper, but the massive points rebate they got, dropping it down to 95 points, is the real story. This enables a strategy of target saturation.
Let's talk about that T10 to T9 drop. Why is that 1 point of toughness so important?
T10 was a really crucial breakpoint. It meant that most standard infantry guns, like Strength 5 weapons, only wounded it on a 6. At T9, those same S5 guns now wound on a 5.
So a single Sagitaur is definitely less likely to survive.
It is. However, if the Votann player can now field 4, 5, maybe even 6 Sagitaurs for the price they used to pay for 3, that redundancy completely makes up for the individual fragility.
Right. The opponent might have enough anti-tank to kill 2 or 3, but they're just drowning in targets. The other 3 or 4 are still rolling up the board, delivering their cargo.
Exactly. The risk calculation changes from, I need this one to survive, to, I can afford to lose a couple of these. They become disposable, efficient, motorized scoring pieces.
And their guns also got the reliability treatment.
They did. The big gun, the Hylas beam cannon, got D6 plus 1 damage, so no more rolling a 1. Yeah. But the real star is the MATR autocannon, which got both twin-linked and assault.
And that assault keyword is the tactical linchpin for Votann, isn't it? Because they're so slow with that 5-inch move.
It's the strategic solution to the army's biggest weakness. The Sagitaur can now advance, so it's moving 12 inches plus a D6 roll, and it can still fire its efficient twin-linked autocannon. This gives the army a threat range of like 18 or 20 inches on turn 1. It lets Votann actually get onto the mid-board objectives right away, which was impossible before.
And then there's the Sagitaur's unique split squad mechanic. At this new low price, that becomes even better for mission play.
This is the real synergy. You can put one 10-man squad of Hearthkin in a Sagitaur, and it splits them into 2 5-man units when they get out.
So you're creating more little units to go score points with?
More disposable scoring units, yeah.
Yeah.
And why do you want disposable units? Because when a Votann unit dies, it fuels their main army rule. Judgment token farming. That 95-point transport and its cheap 5-man squad become assets that, when they die, they actually give you a resource that buffs the rest of your army. The Sagitaur is now this essential engine for mission control and resource generation.
That makes a ton of sense. Okay, let's talk about the infantry that comes out of those transports, the Chthonian Beserks. They had this really complex stat line change, going from a glass cannon to a tar pit brawler.
This is, I think, arguably the most important mathematical change in the whole data slate, and we need to slow down for this one. They used to be T5, 2 wounds with a 6+ save. Now they are T6, 1 wound with a 5+ save, and critically, a 4+ feel no pain.
Okay, so instinctively going from 2 wounds down to 1 sounds awful for a melee unit that has to walk across the board and take fire. It feels like a 50% nerf to their health.
It looks that way on the surface, but that combination of T6 and the better feel no pain, the FNP, it completely changes their survival math, especially against the kinds of weapons you see all the time.
All right, let's start with T6.
T6 is a huge defensive breakpoint. It means those common S5 infantry weapons now wound them on 5s instead of 4s. Weaker S3 guns only wound on 6s, so right away they're just tougher against basic gunfire.
Okay, now for the aha moment. The 4+ FMP versus a damage 1 weapon, like a standard bolter.
Against a damage 1 weapon, that 4+ FNP effectively doubles their wound count. When a Berserk fails its 5+ save, it has a 50-50 chance to just ignore that wound. So on average, it takes 2 unsaved wounds to get past the FNP and kill the model. They are far, far tankier against high-volume fire than that single wound would make you think.
But how does that compare to the old 2-wound profile, especially against damage 2 weapons? You know, like a squad of Hellblasters with their plasma guns.
This is where the new 1-wound profile is actually counterintuitively better. The old 2-wound Berserk, if it failed its save against a D2 weapon, it took 2 wounds and was just instantly removed from the table.
Unless you passed 2 separate 5+ F&P rolls, which was unlikely.
Very unlikely. The new 1-wound Berserk, when it fails its save against that same D2 attack, only takes 1 wound, because that's its maximum. It only needs to make 1 4+ F&P roll to ignore the entire hit and stay on the board.
So the single wound profile, paired with that better F&P, is actually more resilient against high damage attacks because there's no spillover damage.
It's exactly. They're tougher against high volume D1 fire and tougher against high damage D2 fire. They've gone from being this fragile, situational unit to a genuinely durable, multi-purpose brawler that forces your opponent to waste really inefficient firepower to get rid of them.
And to top it all off, they got a utility tool to help them get into combat. The Mole Grenade Launcher now suppresses Overwatch.
This is a huge, subtle fix for any army that wants to charge. The biggest fear for a melee unit is getting wiped out by Overwatch from flamers or other torrent weapons before they even get to fight. The Beserks can just fire their grenade from safety, hit an enemy unit, and turn off their ability to fire Overwatch. It clears the path for themselves or for the other, slower combat units in the Votann army. They're now these utility tanks that solve major tactical problems for the entire list.
All right, we've covered vehicles and infantry. Now let's pivot to the big stuff. The centerpiece monsters, and how the designers applied the same logic by reducing what you call opportunity cost. And that brings us to Chaos Daemons and the terrifying duelist Shalaxi Helbane.
Shalaxi's just built to kill things. It's a dedicated hunter of monsters, vehicles, and characters, and it gets full rerolls to hit, wound, and damage against them. The problem was always the price tag. At 450+ points, it was just too expensive.
Yeah, 450 is a quarter of your whole army. If that thing fails its 9-inch charge at a deep strike, or if the enemy just screens it out, your entire turn's offensive plan is just gone. That high opportunity cost made it a super risky niche pick.
And by cutting the cost, that risk just plummets. The unit becomes this incredibly high leverage trade piece. At its new lower cost, the trade efficiency is phenomenal.
So what's a good trade look like for Shalaxi now?
If Shalaxi comes in and successfully kills another big expensive target, a 475-point Night Castle and a 350-point Primarch, a C'tan Shard, it is immediately paid for itself.
Right.
Even if your opponent then throws everything they have at Shalaxi and kills it on the next turn, you've already won that trade. You took their most critical piece off the board for an equal or even better points exchange.
But if you're holding Shalaxi in Deep Strike, isn't that still a big chunk of your army doing nothing for a turn or two? How reliable is that threat?
Well, that's where the psychological warfare comes in, the fleet in being deterrent. The cheaper the asset is, the more credible the threat becomes. When Shalaxi was 450 points, your opponent could think, okay, if I can just kill that one model, I win.
But now the Demons player can afford to lose it in a trade.
Right, so the mere presence of Shalaxi in reserve forces your opponent's hand. If you're running a hero hammer list, one built around a single, super powerful model, you have to change your entire deployment. You can't just run your big guy up the middle of the board because the threat of a cheaper Shalaxi dropping in and deleting him is just too great.
So it's influencing the entire game before it even arrives on the table.
Exactly. And the Demons player doesn't even have to risk that 9-inch charge anymore. They can use the rapid ingress stratagem,
which lets them bring it in during the opponent's turn.
Yeah, you bring Shalaxi in at the end of your opponent's movement phase, safe from their shooting. Then, on your turn, it moves its massive 14 inches and makes an easy charge. The points drop validates this whole high-risk, high-reward playstyle, not as some desperate gamble, but as a standard, reliable strategy for the army.
The Daemons faction also saw a kind of internal balance shift, right? We can see that in the cost reduction for the standard Keeper of Secrets.
Yeah, this is clearly a design response to the previous meta. For months, the only competitive Demons list was Nurgle Great Unclean Ones with huge toughness and that 4+ Feel No Pain. It was that raw durability archetype we talked about.
And the cheaper Keeper of Secrets encourages the Slaanesh style instead.
It incentivizes speed and avoidance over raw durability. Instead of just soaking up damage, you're using the Keeper's 14-inch move, its 4+ invulnerable save, and its crucial -1 to be hit aura to just avoid being targeted effectively in the first place. It's a totally different defensive philosophy.
And the cheaper Keeper is a great tool for hunting down smaller skirmishing units on the flanks.
A fantastic force multiplier for that job. And, of course, the cost reduction enables the absolutely devastating keep or rush strategy.
Right.
If the model is cheap enough, you can just spam them. You can run a list with 3, 4, maybe even 5 of these giant monsters just charging up the board at the same time. The simple math is that most armies do not have enough high-quality anti-tank shooting to deal with that many huge threats spread all across the battlefield.
So they might kill one or two.
But the other 2 or 3 are going to be in their backline by turn 2, causing catastrophic damage. It's a strategy of overwhelming force, and it's all made possible by that aggressive points cut.
Okay, we've done the big damage dealers and the apex predators, but, games are often won and lost by the quiet, reliable work of utility units, the specialists.
Yeah, and this is where a small points drop or a minor keyword change can have the biggest proportional impact, especially for an elite, low model count army like the Grey Knights. Every single point matters to them.
Let's start with the Grey Knights Interceptor Squad. They got a seemingly tiny 5-point reduction per model.
5 points. Sounds like nothing, right? In a 2,000-point game, what's 5 points?
Yeah.
But you're always taking interceptors in multiples. 2, maybe 3 squads of 5. So a 5-point saving across 3 squads of 5, that's 75 points. That's a huge point surplus in a finely tuned competitive list.
And what does that 75 points buy you in a Grey Knights army?
It lets you afford the best enhancements, like the Sigil of Exigence, which is a get-out-of-jail-free card, or it lets you upgrade a generic character to a named one with better buffs. But more importantly, it just removes the mobility tax they used to pay over the standard strike squad. It makes taking the faster, more flexible unit the obvious choice.
And their role is pure action economy for the mission.
That's all they do. They're specialists for scoring those tricky secondary missions, behind enemy lines, cleanse, things like that. And in a meta where deep strike can be screened out pretty easily, their natural 12-inch move and the fly keyword is just gold. They can jump over screens, they can ignore terrain, and they can score you points without ever having to risk a dangerous charge. The points drop just cements them as a mandatory utility piece.
Staying with Grey Knights, the Purgation Squad also got a 10-point drop. This is their psychic artillery unit.
They are a critical backfield anchor, and it's all because of their unique ability. Astral aim. They can shoot at units they can't see, and this is the key part. They ignore all penalties to hit, and they ignore the benefits of cover when they shoot.
Ignoring cover. There's that AP math coming back into play again, isn't it?
It creates this massive mathematical advantage. Purgators usually take Psy Cannons, which are AP1, damage 2, and like we said, AP1 is often just canceled out by cover.
Yeah.
But because Astral Aim lets them ignore that cover bonus, their AP1 weapon behaves like an AP2 weapon against any target that's in terrain. It's just a huge, reliable boost to their anti-elite firepower from all the way across the board.
So they give you this highly reliable, high-quality shooting that can pretty much hit anything, anywhere. And you often see them paired with a librarian, right?
Yeah, the librarian synergy is incredibly efficient. The Purgators act as a durable bodyguard for the librarian, and in return, the librarian gives them sustained hits 1 on their psychic weapons. You end up with this cheap, tough fire base sitting on your home objective that's pumping out mortal wounds and reliable high AP fire across the whole battlefield.
Okay, let's jump back to AdMech one last time and look at their backfield heavy support, the Skorpius Disintegrator. Its big gun, the Fairmite Cannon, went up to strength 12 and got D6+1 damage.
This is pure anti-tank specialization. It's the same logic as the Ironstrider, but on a much more durable platform. And the whole change is about reaching what you call the S12 golden number.
So why is that 1 point of strength, going from S11 to S12, such a big deal?
Because it hits these crucial wounding breakpoints against the toughest targets in the game. T11 vehicles, which used to be wounded on a 4+ ears, are now wounded on a 3+ air. T12 targets like Land Raiders and Knights that used to be wounded on a 5+ ear are now wounded on a 4+ air.
So you're going from a 50% chance to a 66% chance against one tier of tanks and a 33% chance to a 50% chance against the biggest ones.
It's a massive shift in probability. It transforms the gun from a generalist anti-tank threat into a true reliable tank hunter.
Yep.
And the D6+1 damage just removes the risk of that big S12 shell doing nothing.
Guaranteed 2 damage.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
And strategically, the Disintegrator is tougher than an Ironstrider. And importantly, it's immune to all the anti-walker rules that can hurt other AdMech units. It's this unshakable platform that holds your home objective and projects a highly reliable S12 threat down the entire field. It forces the opponent to deal with both the flanking Ironstriders and this heavy backfield anchor.
Finally, we should probably touch on the emerging threats. those small datasheet tweaks that were clearly designed to fill a roster gap that a faction had.
Yeah, these little datasheet injections. Look at World Eaters. They were desperate for fast, cheap, disposable units to screen and block for them. The update giving them access to Goremongers, which use the Jakel's datasheet, provides that exact pre-game move chaff they needed to protect their real combat units.
And then there's the tiny change to generic Space Marines. Reaver squads getting AP1 on their knives.
And that little change is just validation of this new math. In a meta that's defined by power armor, a melee weapon with AP0 is statistically useless. Giving them AP1, which forces a 4+ save in the open, moves the Reaver from unplayable to niche utility. It's a cheap unit you can drop in the backfield to threaten squishy characters or objective holders. It just proves the designers are carefully looking at every AT value to make sure every unit can at least meaningfully interact with the board.
This has been a really fascinating trip through this new reliability paradigm. We've seen Ironstriders become precision tools, Beserks become these mathematical tanks, Shalaxi becoming an economic weapon. So, after all this analysis, we have to ask the final question. What does this all mean? What's the big takeaway for a competitive player right now?
The grand conclusion, I think, is pretty definitive. This is the era of specialization. The old era of the generalist lists, the one that tried to do a little bit of everything or just relied on being incredibly tough, that's over.
The raw durability list from 2024 is mathematically dead.
The 2025 meta demands a really sophisticated combined arms approach. Success is going to come down to mastering the specific role of each specialist tool in your army and knowing exactly how and when to use it. You have to know when to use the anti-tank Ironstrider, when to use the anti-elite Black Knight, and when to use the mission-playing Sagitaur swarm.
It all comes back to that new mathematics of reliability. The designers have given players tools that promise consistent, predictable results.
And you have to know that math. You have to understand that a twin-link last cannon is statistically worth 2 regular ones in terms of its output. You have to internalize how a 4+ FNP on a T6 body changes everything about how it survives.
Yeah.
If you ignore this new reliability math, you're just playing at a huge competitive disadvantage.
This has been an incredibly detailed look at how these small changes can create these huge strategic shifts.
For you, the listener, the learner, we'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. Now that we've seen the signature reliability buffs, twin-linked, sustained hits, D6+1 damage, go back and reevaluate your own collection. Look at the units that have always felt too random, too high variance. What other parts of the game are still relying on those old, swingy dice rolls? And based on the patterns we've seen today, how might the designers try and fix those units next using these same reliability tools?
The playbook for the future of balance, I think, is right here in front of us.
Food for thought, definitely. Until the next deep dive, keep learning and keep rolling those guaranteed 3s and 4s.